Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I hope I'm able to live up to any expectations that you might have. How many here for the first time? Quite a few, more than half a dozen. Hands up high, please, so we can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Thank you for coming. As Prabhu said, you had many other choices, things you could do this evening, and you came here to hear about Bhagavad Gita, be with the devotees. Thank you very much for that. How many have heard of Bhagavad Gita? Let me restate that. How many haven't? Okay, still half a dozen or so. Okay. So I will speak to you, the half a dozen or so, to give you a background of Bhagavad Gita, and then broaden the discussion. Pardon me for having my hat on, I'm a little cold here. Bhagavad Gita, Sanskrit word, literally means Bhagavan means the possessor of all opulences, which by definition means God. And Gita, it means the song or the words. So Bhagavad Gita means the words spoken by the Supreme Lord. And just like each and every one of us, we have numerous different names. We have the name that our parents gave us at the time of birth. We have different names that our friends call us. We have different names that our spouses call us, or that our girlfriends, boyfriends address us by. Secret names even. So each and every one of us has several names. What to speak of God, who is the Supreme Person? He has many, many names. And we address him as Krishna, which is a Sanskrit word which literally means the most attractive person. Most attractive. And it says in the Vedic scriptures that Bhagavan, or the Supreme Lord, he has 6 different opulences. Wealth is an opulence, fame is an opulence, beauty, knowledge, strength, renunciation. Every one of us in this room has these 6 qualities in various degrees. Some of us have more wealth than others. Some of us are more beautiful than others. Some of us are stronger or less strong. Some of us are more or less famous, like this. So all of these opulences, the source is God. And the name Krishna means the most attractive person, or the source of all opulences, because every one of us is naturally attracted to somebody who is famous, to somebody who has exquisite beauty, to somebody who has extraordinary wealth, extraordinary strength, and so on. It's naturally an attractive quality. But the source of all of these qualities is God, or Krishna. So today marks an anniversary, some 5,000 year plus anniversary, of when Krishna, the Supreme Lord, he had a dialogue, a conversation with an intimate friend named Arjuna. And a very interesting dialogue because it took place on a battlefield of all places, the beginning of a war. And I won't go into the context behind how the war came to be. It's a long, long story. But basically, it was to overcome the influence of irreligion and reestablish religious principles and religious leaders to rule the world. And in those days, religious leaders were actually pure. We have religious leaders today who may not be so pure. They have a tendency to cheat and mislead people. But back in these days, 5,000 years ago, when the Bhagavad Gita was first spoken, that wasn't the case. And Arjuna, who is a very powerful devotee general, he was a military man. just before the battle was to begin, he told Krishna, who was driving his chariot, he said, bring my chariot in between the two armies. The armies are assembled on the battlefield. And he said, I want to see who is assembled here and who's anxious to fight. And so Krishna brought him the chariot in the midst of both of the armies. And on both sides, Arjuna saw friends and relatives and his teachers, his spiritual teachers and his martial teachers and family members. And when he saw this huge assembly of men who were anxious to fight, his mind became overwhelmed with compassion. And he said, frankly, to Krishna, what is the point of me engaging in this battle? Even if I'm to win and become victorious, all the people that I would want to share the victory with, most of them are going to be dead. So in conclusion, they had a short, it was actually, Arjuna brought up 5 different reasons not to fight. Sense of compassion, that it would be sinful activity. He made a very strong argument that it would destroy the family tradition, because if all the men were killed, then the women would have no one to protect them, and then they would fall prey to unscrupulous men and have unwanted children. And we see in today's society what the result is when there's unwanted progeny. And Arjuna saw the danger of this, and he concluded, he said, Krishna, I won't fight. So that was the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. And the next 17 chapters, there's a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, where Krishna is explaining to him why it is that you should do your duty and at the same time do it from a sense of spirituality. Now, it may bewilder us to consider, well, how can fighting in a war be a spiritual affair? And it can be if the cause is to reestablish religious principles, which it was. And so Arjuna presented all of these different arguments why I shouldn't engage in this warfare. And Krishna he countered all of the arguments, and at the end he said, now I've answered all of your questions, now do what you want to do. So he didn't say you should do this or you should do that. God is the supreme independent person, and every one of us has that quality of independence in a minute quantity. We're all tiny particle of God, a spirit soul. We're tiny part and parcel of God, and we have not all of God's qualities, but most of God's qualities in a minute quantity. Just like if you take a piece of gold imagine a golden mountain. You take a piece of gold from it. The qualities of that piece of gold, I have a gold ring, most of us have some gold. If you examine the qualities of that piece of gold, they're the same qualities that the mountain possesses, but the mountain possesses qualities that this small piece of gold can't, because of its volume, quantity, and things like that. So in the same way, we have godly qualities in minute quantities. But the dilemma is that we cannot access those godly qualities or godly nature for the simple reason that we are thinking that whatever my skin is, that's what I am. I'm a man. Some of us are thinking I'm a woman. Some of us are thinking I'm an American or I'm from India. Someone is thinking I'm a dog. Someone is thinking I'm a cherry tree. Someone is thinking I'm a demigod. According to whatever body we're in, we're thinking this is me. But factually it's not. We are not these bodies, but we are a spirit soul that's giving life to this matter, to this material body, just like if you, how many of you have kids? Kids have remote controlled toys, battery operated toys. You put a battery in it, let's say it's a car. The kid pushes the buttons, the car goes forward, left, right, backwards. Why? Because of the presence of the battery. The battery's dead, the toy car can't do anything. So in a very, very similar way, this material body has no life in and of itself until the spirit soul, which is the life force, is presented into the body. And that we call conception. And because of the presence of the spirit soul, the body appears to grow, but actually it's changing. And when the spirit soul is removed from the body, we call that death. The soul never dies. It never takes birth. We never grow old. We never suffer from diseases. But the body does. The body appears to grow old. It's actually, Prabhupada says, the body isn't growing, it's changing. And those of you who are in medical field, it's common knowledge that the cells have a finite lifespan. Within a certain number of years, every cell in the body has been regenerated. So the body doesn't actually grow, it changes, and it's changing at every moment. And it's due to the presence of the spirit soul within the body. And when that soul is removed from the body, then that's what we call death. The body is dead. I remember 4 years ago, my father passed away. His body was afflicted by cancer in his chest. And I was speaking at the memorial service just before we put his body in the ground. And there's the casket in front. It was in a church, and the casket was there in front of me. His body was laid there, and people were there to pay last respects. And I said, he's right there. What is missing? My father's body is right there. But every one of us knows that he's gone. We intuitively understand that he's no longer there, although his body is right there. And it's not like, he had a heart transplant, his organs were failed, or he died in a car crash or something. All the organs were there. Everything was there, except for the spirit soul. And that's what we call death, when the spirit soul is removed from the body. So each and every one of us is spiritual by nature. But because we're thinking, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a human being, I'm an Indian, I'm a dog, I'm a cat, we can't access our real spiritual nature. It's just like when we have a disease, we're in an unhealthy condition. Srila Prabhupada would give the example often of jaundice. Anybody ever had jaundice? Well, quite a few of you. I haven't, but I have quite a few friends who were severely afflicted with it. When Prabhupada says that when you have jaundice, even sugar tastes really bitter. Now, what stage of existence is sugar ever bitter? When it's a plant, the baby plant, it's not bitter. When it's medium grown, when it's full grown, at no point in the existence of sugar is it ever bitter. But if you have jaundice, it tastes bitter. You can't taste the sweetness of sugar. And that's due to the nature of the disease. So in exactly the same way, when we're thinking that this body is me, we can't access our godly nature, our godly qualities. Just like somebody with jaundice can't taste the sweetness of sugar. It's not possible. until we become healthy again. And so when we finally achieve that state of health, then sugar tastes really sweet. And so, to carry that analogy, as we elevate our consciousness on the path of transcendence, we can understand our godly nature. The more we get freed from the disease of thinking on this body, that I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a human, as we get free from this, Prabhupada calls it a disease, as we get freed from this diseased consciousness, then we can attain to our real spiritual and godly natures and qualities. So the process of getting from here, the disease condition, to there, that is the nature of the discussion of Bhagavad Gita. Where Arjuna, initially he says, Krishna, I don't want to do my duty. As a military man, he was a very powerful general. And his duty as a general, as a military man, was to engage in this warfare. And every one of us in this room, we have duties. If we're husbands, we have duties to our wives. If we're parents, we have duties to our children. If we're children, we have duties to our parents. If we're employees, we have duties to our employers. Even if we're the king, prime minister, or whatever, we have duties to the citizens. If we're the CEO of a corporation, we have duties to the shareholders. So every one of us, at every stage of our life, we have duties. So how, when we have all these, I've named quite a few responsibilities, parents, employees or employers, we've got so many things pulling at us, at our time and our energy and our wallet and whatever resources we have, constantly pulling at us. So how to find a balance to maintain our material duties and responsibilities and at the same time cultivate our spiritual nature? That's really a difficult thing to do. But that's why the majority of you are here as either practicing transcendentalists or inquiring about the path of transcendence. How do we actually do it? How do we practice spiritual life in the material world? How do we practice spiritual life when we're pulled with so many obligations, family obligations, financial obligations, employee-employer obligations, social organizations, religious obligations? So many directions we're pulled constantly. And it gets even more so when we have children. And the children are growing, you have to take them to school, and there's different affairs that the kids are engaged in, sports, extracurricular activities, college time, we have to get more income to save for the kids to put them in college. How is it possible that we can find time in our life to develop our spiritual nature? It's an interesting question. And it's a dilemma that each and every one of us who is on the path of transcendence faces every day. Excuse me a moment. So we have to cultivate our spiritual knowledge and maintain our material duties and responsibilities. We have to find some sense of balance. Inasmuch as, sometimes we say, oh, I don't have time, I got so much to do. But when you actually fall really sick, what can you do? If you're bedridden because you're so ill, you can't take care of your family duties, you can't take care of your duties as an employee or as an employer. Everything stops, right? Until we get to a condition where we can be healthy again. So we have to find a balance so that we can spend part of our time every day in search of spiritual knowledge, and when we have spiritual knowledge, how to apply it in our day-to-day life. And the whole subject matter of Bhagavad Gita is how to develop that balance. First of all, why we should have the balance, and how to actually achieve it. That's really the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita. And to summarize it in just a few sentences, when Arjuna asks, how do we do this? Krishna explains that we have to be balanced in all of our activities. We have to, actually, the word he says is we have to become a yogi. Now, sometimes we think of yogi as, hatha yoga, where someone is sitting in a particular pose, trying to control his breathing process and this and that. That's, one small aspect of yoga. But the ultimate goal, purpose of yoga is to understand that the Supreme Lord is Krishna, and that we are a tiny part and parcel of him, and that the perfection of yoga is to engage in loving service to the Lord. And so to get there, we have to learn to balance our activities in our life. Krishna says, don't eat too much, don't eat too little, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. In all things, we have to just balance. What do I actually need to do this? Whatever activity it is. Okay, we sit down for a meal. How much do I actually need to eat? There's some people, some cultures actually, they live to eat. And other cultures, they eat to live. Last year I was in Indonesia, and people there eat very simply. They eat a little rice, a little vegetable, something like that. They just eat so they can just live. But in other countries, eating is the whole purpose. Or at least one of the main purposes. So it has to be a balance. Okay, we have to maintain our health. Okay, we have to eat certain things, and we should eat, responsibly. Eat for our health instead of for our tongue. And don't eat too much, but don't eat too little. Have to maintain a sense of balance. The body needs exercise. It needs some fresh air. We need some activity. We need some exercise. So we have to do that every day. If we don't do it, then the body becomes ill. Yesterday I sat in the car for 3 hours driving to Columbus. Then I sat in a meeting for another hour and a half. And I spent most of the day sitting. And today I sat on the floor and I did my spiritual sadhana. And then I sat in a appreciation ceremony, Vyas Puja it's called. And I sat. Now I got a huge headache. But not enough exercise. Just to maintain health, we have to do certain things. So to recover, when we're bedridden with the disease, we have to, our lifestyle is already radically changed. We have to do certain things, and we have to refrain from certain things. So in the same way, to recover our spiritual health, we have to do certain things. And one of the prime activities that we need to do is to hear from the scriptures, like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, like that. Here's a copy of Bhagavad Gita here on the altar. Because the scriptures are the words of God, or the words of God's pure devotees. And they are meant for our guidance and our benefit, just as much as road signs on a curvy road, dangerous road, curve to the left, curve to the right, 30 miles an hour, curve to the left. It's the sign is meant for your protection and the protection of the other people on the road coming the other way. I like to say that, if you see a road, a sign curved to the left 30 miles an hour, and you can say, well, I don't want to go, I want to go 70 miles an hour. Well, yeah, you can do it. Probably can't do it twice, but you can do it once. It's meant for your protection and to protect other people on the road. In the same way with at least we'll speak theory of laws, although we know that there's laws that make no sense in all cultures around the world today. But in theory, laws are meant to protect those people who want to be law-abiding citizens, and to separate those who don't want to follow the laws. They're put in they're given special accommodations, free meals and 3 meals a day, and a roof over their head and a steel door to lock them in, something like that. So the same way, the rules and regulations of the scriptures are meant for our protection. They're meant for our benefit. It's like as parents, our kids want to do some things time to time that we know are harmful. Sometimes they're insistent. Like when they first see fire. Oh, look, do you want to touch the fire? No, you don't touch the fire. Oh, I want to. Well, no, you don't touch the fire. And finally, after, telling them 3, 4, 5 times, and they're still insisting, okay, touch the fire. Ah! So even as parents, we're trying to give good advice to our children. But even as babies, maybe it's especially as babies, we exercise our independent nature and, want to do even things that are detrimental to ourselves. So the rules and regulations, even from the parents, which speak of the scriptures, are meant for our protection so that we can elevate ourselves. When the child, by the time they reach the age of 5, they've spent the last 2 years just exploring and playing, the terrible twos where they're getting into everything, and then running around when they're 3, 4 years old, and then when the age of 5, you got to go to school. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school. But no, he makes them go to school. Why? Because they'll elevate themselves by getting proper education. It's a very simple concept. I'm sure everybody can understand that. But in exactly the same way, we have to educate ourselves about our spiritual nature. Who is God? Who am I? What is my relationship with God? What is my relationship with this world? Why do I have to grow old? Why do I have to suffer disease? Why do I have to die? These are common questions in every culture around the world. But Bhagavad Gita has the answer to these questions. Who is God? God's the supreme person. He's a person. Like you and I are persons, but he's a perfect person. We all suffer from frailties and inconsistencies as a person. Hair falls out, teeth fall out, liver goes bad, kidneys hurt, joints don't work. But God doesn't suffer from these inebrities. And as tiny, tiny particles of God, we also don't. But because I'm thinking, I'm this body, when the body gets injured, oh, I feel sick. Oh, I got a headache. You're in a small accident in your car, fender bender, where nobody gets hurt. But the driver of one car gets out, goes to the driver of the other car, you hit me! Well, no, my car hit your car. I didn't actually hit you. My car hit your car. There's actually a very fundamental difference here. It's not just semantics. So in the same way, the body goes through these different changes and developments. Sometimes healthy, sometimes not healthy, sometimes growing, sometimes diminishing, decreasing, sometimes very energetic, and sometimes just absolutely no energy. but it's simply the body. Now, who am I? I'm spirit soul. And the symptom of the spirit soul is a consciousness. Let's try a little experiment. Close your eyes. Put your hand on your head. Okay, put your hand on your arm. Put your hand on your leg. Okay, touch your nose. Touch your ear. Touch yourself. It's my head, it's my nose, it's my ear, it's my arm, it's my leg. But where are you? Where am I? I'm the spirit spark giving life to this dead matter. And when the soul is removed from this machine, it's really a wonderful machine. It's an extraordinary machine. But when the soul is removed, when the battery is taken out of the toy car, it can't do anything, in layman's terms. It's dead. So I am the soul that's giving life to this body. Because of my presence within this body, it's growing. It's well, not growing. It's changing. It has animation. It appears to have life. It appears to work. It does work. It does do things, but not on its own volition. It's because I, the spirit soul, am residing in this body. Now, what is my relationship to God? I said earlier that we're a tiny particle of God. Just like if you take a drop of water from the ocean and you examine it under a microscope, all the qualities that that drop of water has, the ocean also has. Chemically, I don't even know the terminology you use. I'm sure all of you are much more intelligent than me. But it's a fact. Whatever qualities that drop of water has, the ocean has. And the ocean has qualities that the drop of water cannot possess, simply because of its vast size and things like that. So I'm a tiny particle of God. But what is my relationship with Him? It's just like the relationship of the hand to the body. Now I'm sure most of us have two hands. And when the hand is properly connected to the body, it can do so many wonderful things. Properly trained hand can do surgery, it can do sewing, it can do painting, it can play piano, it can do so many different extraordinary activities. But if the hand is locked off, it's cut off, it's laying on the floor here, it's the same hand. What kind of qualities does it have? How can it benefit the body? It's disconnected. It really can perform no beneficial activities for the body, and it also can perform no beneficial activities for itself. So in exactly the same way, if we disconnect ourselves from God, it's like the hand that's been severed from the arm. We can't realize our godly nature, our godly qualities. It's not possible. So real health, from the spiritual sense, means reviving that connection. Now it's not like the analogy of the hand has been cut off. The soul is never cut off from the Lord, from God. But we leave Him out of our life, and we are disconnected from the Lord in that fashion. And it's a completely voluntary thing. So the process of spiritual advancement is to reconnect our day-to-day activities with God. Now, what does that mean in a practical sense? No, I've got my wife, I've got my kids, I've got my job. I mean, how do I connect, my program? I'm a computer programmer. How do I connect that to God? Interesting question. I've got my spouse to take care of. I've got my kids to take care of. How can I connect that to God? By understanding that everyone is part and parcel of God, and that whatever skills and abilities we have, they're God-given gifts. They're really God-given gifts. And as I said in the beginning, that the Supreme Lord Krishna, He is the possessor of all opulences in full. All wealth comes from Him. All knowledge comes from Him. So by utilizing whatever skills and ability the Lord has given us in His service, that's how we reconnect with God. And it's not that we have to, give up our family life, give up our work, move into a temple somewhere. It's not even, not only is it not recommended, not required, it's not even recommended, actually. Unless one is just exceedingly renounced. But for the vast majority of us, we can connect with the Supreme Lord Krishna by utilizing whatever skills and abilities we have in His service. Just like Arjuna in the conversation in Bhagavad Gita. Military man, a great general. He fought, killed many, many thousands of people in the battle because it was the instruction of Krishna to do this. Krishna wanted to reestablish religious principles in the monarchy. Because there's a statement, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tat tadevi taro janaha sayat pramano kurute lokas tad anavartate. That whatever actions a great person performs, the common people follow in their footsteps. And whatever standards they set, that's what everybody does. So if our leaders are saintly, then the natural tendency is for the followers to also become saintly. And the corollary is also true, unfortunately. If our leaders are crooks and liars and thieves, then that mentality becomes rampant throughout culture. As we see today in many cultures around the world, politicians say anything to get elected, and then they do whatever the hell they want to stay elected. And it's like this. So Krishna says that whatever actions a great person performs, we tend to follow. So we utilize whatever gifts that we've been given, whatever intelligence we have, whatever strength, like this. We all have different God-given gifts. We utilize them in the service of the Lord. And it's like taking the medicine that's been prescribed by the physician. When we're sick, we go to a doctor. Doctor says, here, gives you this medicine and says, take this medicine according to this schedule. And we can't take it according to our whim. If we think the doctor gives us 100 pills and says, take, 2 a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, with a meal, take them till, for 50 days, and you'll be cured. If we think, wow, that's so good, I'm going to get cured today. And so, take all 100 of them, right? No, we have to follow the directions of the doctor. Because he knows the nature of the disease. He knows how you can become cured. And so this is the great beauty of Bhagavad Gita as it is. Srila Prabhupada is an expert physician. He knows the nature of our disease. And what is that? That I'm thinking I'm a man, or I'm a woman, I'm an American, I'm an Indian, I'm a dog, I'm a tree. And the knowledge, it's a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, between God and his devotee. But Srila Prabhupada has written extensive commentaries to understand how to apply this timeless wisdom today. Even though it was spoken 5,000 years ago, It's relevant today. It's relevant next week. It'll be relevant in 5,000 years. It'll be relevant in 50,000 years. It's timeless wisdom because it speaks to the spiritual nature of each and every one of us, not to the temporal, physical nature. Because it's guaranteed the body's going to die. The only question is it going to be today or tomorrow? Really, when you come down to it, it's, am I going to die today or is it going to be tomorrow? So we need to have that sense of urgency that there's no guarantee I'm going to live to see the rising of the sun tomorrow. There's absolutely no guarantee. And it's especially important for those of us who are advanced in age, so to speak, because from a statistical perspective, we're real close. We're much closer than those who are younger. So it's really important that we understand through the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita who I am and who is God, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship to Him, what is my relationship to other parts and parcels of the Lord, what is my relationship to the material energy of the Lord, and how do these all interact. And this is explained very scientifically in the pages of Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures. So I strongly encourage each and every one of you to somehow or another organize time in your life, best if it's a daily basis, to 15 minutes something, to spend 15 quality minutes with the scripture, with Bhagavad Gita, or with Srimad Bhagavatam, any of our scriptures. And use your intellect to try to understand what is the message that's being given. Because by acting on that level, God is in your heart. And when He sees that, oh, she's trying to understand me, she's trying to understand me, He gives you intelligence. He will reveal to you within your heart to encourage you to come back to Him. Just like if one of your children ran away from home and living homeless in the streets of some city somewhere, living under a bridge, no parent wants to see that. But you can't force them to come home. You can't force them to be happy living in your house. You can't force them. But however you can encourage them, every parent wants that. So in exactly the same way, when the Supreme Lord who is in your heart sees that, oh, He's trying to understand me, He's trying to understand the scripture, He helps you from within. And you will feel that as tangible. It's not some theoretical thing. You'll feel it, experience it, to the extent that you apply yourself, to the extent that you try. And it's not that we have to understand it. We have to try. Because actually, factually, in the beginning of our spiritual path, not even the beginning, we can't understand so many things in the scriptures. Because we have, our intelligence is covered. It's just like when we have jaundice, we can't understand that sugar is sweet. We can't understand it. And because of the disease. So as the effects of the disease lessen, then we can experience the real quality. So we simply have to try to understand. And the Lord will give you all help, both from within and also from without. The devotees here in this room, they would be very, very happy to help each and every one of you to understand when we have questions. How do we do this? What does he mean here? We'd love to help you. So that is my request, each and every one of you. Please get a Bhagavad Gita. And especially, there's so many editions of Bhagavad Gita, but especially Bhagavad Gita as it is. Matter of fact, 1965, I think it was, 66, long time ago. A woman asked Srila Prabhupada, why did you write another translation of Bhagavad Gita? At that time there was like 200 of them on the market. And Srila Prabhupada explained to her that even though there's many translations of Bhagavad Gita, at that time, 1965, not one single one of them had convinced anybody that God is Krishna and that they should take to the process of serving Krishna, which is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. That's the end point. They've not made one devotee because the authors, or the commentators, they had some personal agenda. So Srila Prabhupada, he entitled his translation Bhagavad Gita as it is. And without question, it is the widest, most sold edition of Bhagavad Gita ever, anywhere, all time, any language. In fact, I think I forget how many hundreds of millions of copies of Bhagavad Gita as it is are in print. And I think it's been translated into 81 languages, something like that. So in 50 years, it's become very, very widespread. And for the simple reason that when people read it, they have realizations that this is the real thing. Because in the pages of Bhagavad Gita, either intellectually or through the heart, you understand these are the answers, that this is real. I had that realization a long time ago, 1970, early 70s something, I don't even remember. That when I first read Bhagavad Gita, I was an avid reader I still am. When I was a child, I would devour books. Lord of the Rings, it was 3 volumes. It was like, forget how many thousands of pages, maybe like 3,000 pages. I read it in 4 days. The whole 3,000 pages. I just have a capacity for reading. But Bhagavad Gita, it was just like went way over my head in the sense that I couldn't understand, but I appreciated. I knew that there's just a really, really deep body of knowledge here. Really deep. And I was attracted to that. And simply by my desire to understand, Krishna has helped so much. I guarantee you, money back guarantee, I'll refund the price of your admission this evening. That if you just try to understand Bhagavad Gita and just make it a regular daily affair, even if it's just 10 minutes. We all space out a little bit during the day. But just dedicate a small amount of time to hearing about Krishna and about your relationship with him. I guarantee you, your life will be changed in a way that you cannot possibly imagine. In a good way, in a very good way, extraordinary way. There's bad changes, but this is not bad change. This is a wonderful change. How do you will? So I will stop speaking here, and I'd like to have a discussion, questions, answers, and if anybody has any questions, yes, sir.
I have a comment.
Thank you.
There is a reason why battlefield was chosen for Bhagavad Gita.
There's a reason why Kurukshetra, yeah.
battlefield was chosen for
Yes.
Bhagavad Gita.
He's saying that there's a reason why the Bhagavad Gita was spoken on a battlefield, and there was a holy place in northern India called Kurukshetra. This gentleman is describing this. Go ahead.
The simple reason is, for the common man, every day is a battle. That is why we have labeled Somvar, Mangalvar, Budhvar. So it drives home the point that we have to fight a battle every day, not just on the battlefield.
Yes, we're fighting battles every day. And who is our biggest enemy?
But
Who's our biggest enemy? The mind. The uncontrolled mind. You know, it's humorous. If you, let's say your mind was a consultant that you're paying money to hire, okay, to get their good advice. Man, we'd fire that guy in a moment. The mind tells us one thing today, it's just, gets on your case, gotta do this, gotta do this, gotta do this, okay. And then, tomorrow it's just like, why'd you do that? Just tell you to do something just completely different. That's the uncontrolled mind, and it's our biggest enemy. We have to, and that's a lot of the discussion in Bhagavad Gita. How to control the mind. And Arjuna, who is very, very powerful man, extremely well accomplished on many different levels, he told Krishna, frankly, I think it's easier to control the wind than control the mind. And Krishna said, you may be right, but it is possible. By two characteristics: constant practice, constantly practicing, and by detachment. Detachment in the sense that when the mind tells us something to do that's not good for us, how many have experienced that? All of us, all the time, right? Just we don't listen to it. Okay, thanks for sharing, Mr. Mind. Thanks for sharing, and just, And Srila Prabhupada gives the example, it's like a powerful lion. You put it in a cage, and you just don't feed it. And the lion's going to make all kinds of noise because he's in a cage, he's not running around wild like he wants to. And he's going to roar, just try and scare us. But you keep him in the cage, you don't feed him, acknowledge he's there, understand he's very dangerous. But he's in the cage, don't feed him, and gradually he'll just weaken. So in the same way, we just, okay, thanks for sharing, mind, put that idea over here. Okay, that's interesting, but I don't think I'll do that either. And just, we don't pay it attention. Now we pay attention, but we don't give it credence. We don't, yes sir, yes ma'am, and just jump to everything that it tells us to do. And gradually it will become weakened. Which really is another way of saying that we'll become stronger. And so both things are happening. We'll become stronger in not listening to the pushing and dictation of the mind. If you don't do this, you're an idiot. You got to do this, and it's just okay. It is possible. And when the mind is finally controlled, it's our best friend. It goes from our greatest enemy to our greatest friend. Because it will then tell us how we can utilize every moment of every day properly in the service of the Lord. Also, Kurukshetra is another name for Kurukshetra is Dharmakshetra. Dharma means means religious activities, spiritual activities, and Kshetra means a place. So Dharmakshetra means a place where religious activities were performed for thousands of years. And so there is a religious spiritual significance to the battle taking place at Kurukshetra. In fact, it's the very, very first verse, Dharmakshetri Kurukshetra. Go ahead.
is it correct to say that Sri Krishna's advice to Arjuna is follow your dharma? That means don't be a warrior, be a warrior.
Don't be a warrior, be a warrior. But the ultimate conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna saying you have to perform your duty, but do it to please me. Do it out of a sense of duty to me. That's the ultimate conclusion. Thank you. Other questions?
I can add to his comment actually.
Please.
So Kurukshetra was also the place where Parashurama, he performed the last rites of his father Jamadagni with the blood of all the 21 generations. He did it with that actually. And so, Brahmadeva himself blessed that whoever dies in that place, they are sure to attain mukti.
Thank you.
I can ask.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sometimes people say that.
Speak loud so people can.
Sometimes people say that you have to be just nice person.
Sometimes people say you just have to be a nice person.
Yeah, you have to do your duties, and God will take care of everything. So you just do your family duties and other duties, and you be kind to everyone. Don't do anything wrong, and just be a nice person, and then everything will go good. So why would somebody want to read Bhagavad Gita? And because they are already feeling that they are nicely doing their duties and taking care of their responsibilities and everything. So they are satisfied in their.
So he's saying, let me summarize, make sure I'm clear, that some people say that we just be a nice person, we do our duties properly, and God will take care of everything else. More or less summarized. That is a current philosophy. And there are benefits to that. But the benefits is by leading a pious life, we will get pious things in return. But the problem is that we will have to take birth again to enjoy those pious results, the results of pious activities. And the purpose of a human life is to get free from the samsara. Samsara is a Sanskrit word. It means the cycle of repeated birth and death. In the scriptures, it's explained that there's 84 lakh of different species, 8,400,000 species, different species of human beings, so many species of aquatics, so many species of plants, birds and reptiles like this. And samsara means that sometimes you're taking birth in a higher species, sometimes you're taking birth in a lower species. And it's all according to the piety of your activities. But the ultimate goal is to get free from this cycle. And performing pious activities will not bring one freedom. It will guarantee one a higher birth. But when the results of those pious activities are exhausted, then again you have to take birth on this planet. It's like, okay, you husband and wife have a job, you save up your money and you go on a once in a lifetime vacation. However you define that. And you go for a long time to a really wonderful place. And what happens? When your money runs out or when your time runs out, you got to go back. Back to your home, back to your job, back to whatever. So it's like that. Performing pious activities is kind of like going on vacation. We go to a really wonderful place for a limited period of time. And then you have to go back to your normal existence. But human form of life It's meant to get free from this cycle of repeated birth and death. And one can only get free from that cycle by engaging in the service of Krishna. It's the only way. And I'm not saying that because our way is best. No, it's the only way. Just like the only way to get healthy is to follow the directions of your personal doctor. I mean, assuming that they're competent and qualified, like that. It's the only way. Is that good?
And so where do we, liberation from the cycle of, what happens after that? Where do we go?
So when we get liberated from the cycle of birth and death, very good point, thank you very much. We return to the spiritual world. There's a spiritual world that's far, far away from this material world. And it's where there is, it's called the Vaikuntha. Kuntha means anxiety, and the prefix vai, V-A-I, means freed, or absence. Now how many of you have experienced, at least once in your life, some anxiety? Most of us, right? Even sometimes on a daily basis, right? So the spiritual world, where when one becomes free from the cycle of samsara, birth and death, the spiritual world, there's no anxiety. There's no birth. There's no death. Krishna describes it very briefly in Bhagavad Gita. But it's the place of our origin. Just like you're laying in bed, having a nightmare, okay? And you're dreaming a tiger is chasing you, and he's just about to leap on you and kill you and eat you. And it's like, you're just, in your nightmare, you're experiencing great fear and terror. Ah, tiger's gonna eat me! And your wife wakes you up. You're having a bad dream. Was there actually a tiger? No. Was he ever going to eat you? No. Were you suffering from that? Yes. The suffering was real. The cause of the suffering was not real. So we're in this material world, and we're thinking, my boss is going to fire me. I'm not going to get the raise. My spouse is going to leave me. My kids are going to flunk, and have to, take that grade all over again. I'm going to have to file, and so many different things. They're like nightmares. The suffering that we're experiencing is real, but the cause is not. In the spiritual world, these things don't exist. Prabhupada used the term, they're conspicuous by their absence. How many of you have been so absorbed in doing something that all of a sudden you realize, my God, 5 hours have flown by? The time becomes conspicuous by its absence. All of a sudden you realize the time, and it's like, whoosh, 5 hours is gone. I didn't realize the 5 hours were passing, but it's conspicuous by its absence.
In the human life, anybody can achieve that liberated life?
Yes.
What is it?
What is it?
Yeah.
It's understanding that I am not this body, that I'm spirit, soul, that I'm a tiny particle of God. And when you actually understand that, you become liberated. And that liberation means that you understand fully, clearly, in your intelligence and in your heart, I'm not this body. I have absolutely nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. Why? I can't die. I can't get sick. I don't grow old. But there's a stage beyond liberation. That's when liberation, it's like a neutral phase. It's like, suddenly the day that you're well, okay, you're no longer diseased. Okay, you've been in the hospital so long you can't even remember. And now all of a sudden, wow, I'm not sick anymore. Okay, that's a neutral stage. Because once you get out of the hospital, you've got a life. You've got a real life. But can't experience that real life until you become free from disease, which is like the liberation phase. And then beyond that, you have actual life. So actual life is when me, the spirit soul giving life to this body, reconnects with God, with Krishna. And it's like your long lost son who ran away from home. All of a sudden he just regains his love for his father and his mother and comes back home. It's a little bit like that, but a lot more. That help? Okay, thank you.
But Krishna himself had many other births like afterwards. So, are we to take the conclusion that he himself is bound by karma, which means he is not liberated from?
He's saying Krishna himself had many births, so are we to understand that he also had karma, that he's bound? No, we are not to understand that way. Because you and I, we were forced to take birth. Okay? We're forced to be in these bodies. I don't like it that my joints don't work so well anymore. I don't like it that my teeth are falling out. But I'm forced to endure these things. Krishna is not. He appears in many different species, actually in every species. He appears time and time and time again. Why? To attract us, to teach us. Remember I mentioned a verse, Yad Yad Acharti Shreshtas, whatever activities a great man performed, common people follow. So God himself periodically appears in this material universe simply to attract us. And those who are pure devotees of the Lord have those same attractive qualities in different quantities. Like my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, he was enormously attractive in so many different levels. There was nobody like him. Even just if he looked at you, it was just an extraordinary affair. It was such an experience that you'd never had before. Because Prabhupada didn't see the external, Prabhupada sees the heart. I mean, I could feel him. It's kind of scary for me. And he was just so graceful, the way he would speak and how he would respond to things. Completely unpredictable. Not that being unpredictable is a particular quality, but sometimes, we know a person that, okay, if they're in this situation, they're going to react in a particular way. They're going to become angry, they're going to be upset or something, they're going to smile. Prabhupada was just completely unpredictable because he was completely in contact with the Lord in the heart and totally on the spiritual level. You and I were forced to take birth in these bodies. Krishna is not. He comes simply to attract, and he also sends from time to time his representatives, empowered people. Jesus Christ was an empowered person. Muhammad was an empowered person. Srila Prabhupada is an empowered person. I mean, Jesus Christ was 2,000 years ago, and people are still very much aware. Although the knowledge may have been changed over the course of millennium, but Krishna also addresses that. He says that I reappear to reestablish the principles of religion. And by Srila Prabhupada translating these scriptures and writing elaborate commentaries on them, it's exactly the same thing. He is reestablishing religious principles and putting the knowledge in a fashion that we can understand. Because we can't understand the Sanskrit. And even if we understand Sanskrit, it's just like the principles, the concepts are so lofty that we can't understand, really the depth of it. So Srila Prabhupada, he spent a tremendous amount of his life energy making the scriptures understandable in today's society. And the result is, we can see the result by how many hundreds of millions of these scriptures have been distributed around the world. I said 400 million for Bhagavad Gita, but the sum total for all the books that Srila Prabhupada translated and published is something over 700 million copies. And it's transforming people worldwide, regardless of male, female, regardless of age, regardless of culture, regardless of country. Just transforming, because it speaks to our spiritual nature. So please, get a Bhagavad Gita, bring it home with you, just make the determination, I'm going to spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes. More is better, but at least that much on a daily basis. And like I said, money back guarantee for the price of this admission this evening. Thank you very much.